Welcome to the kickoff of the Women Leadership Program 2021 and 2022. Thank you for joining us virtually in the studio of the Netherlands Enterprise Agency in The Hague on behalf of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. A warm welcome today. The kickoff of the two-year program this year virtually, we all know what the reason is, and hopefully in 2022, we will all receive you live. My name is Sahar Shirzad. I will be your host for today. I specialize in themes concerning human rights, and more specifically currently in the refugee policies. And I call myself, for as long as I can remember, a passionate feminist, and have done a lot of activities in the Netherlands since I was young for the gender equality here, which makes me extra excited today. For the first time, so I said it is digital, and you have received an overview of the program by the organizing committee, which you can see in the B2 Match platform. If possible, of course, as I said, we will receive you then live in 2022. Through this program, we aim to introduce you to the relevant Dutch organizations, initiatives, and contacts in the field of women leadership. We strive to contribute to developing a valuable network between leaders and advocates of women's empowerment in the Netherlands and the MENA region. So it is International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day. And we have special guests on this special day who will share their visions and experiences. And interaction is, of course, very important. It's not up to me to talk today or only to the panel members, but more specifically, we want to get to know you. So what you can do if you want to speak up in the interactive sessions is to raise your hand and unmute your microphone. Just because of the progress of the program concerning sound, it's important to keep your microphone on mute unless you want to talk. If you unmute your microphone and speak, you will be automatically in the screen and we will see you have your moment and question. So there is enough opportunity to ask questions, enough opportunity to get to know each other and have that network that I talked about. First half of the program today, we have Pascal Grotehuis, who's next to me already. She's a Women's Rights and Gender Equality Ambassador here in the Netherlands. She will give us an insight into the Dutch gender policy and covering themes such as women's economic position and women's role in peace and security. After a short break then of 10 minutes, we will continue with the second part of the day with the panel. It's a panel discussion, so that will be interactive immediately, and we will discuss the challenges of women leadership. What is the price that it costs to be a leader and a female in today's world? And the positions we face in the Netherlands and in the MENA region, of course, and focusing on seeking for solutions and discussing the importance of women's network. So I want to do a short exercise to see if everyone is present. I don't see the videos here of the beautiful participants today. I just see the pictograms. Can we have a test that Rawan Salim, for example, raise your hand. Do I see you? Rawan Salim, if I want you to speak today, where is she? Just to do a short practice. She's not here. Or maybe Gada Ibrahim. I see you. Gada? Hi. Can you raise your hand and speak and unmute, see if it works?
Okay, I'm raising my hand and I'm muted and speaking. I can't hear you for some reason. Can you hear me?
Terug naar mij?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Sorry, you can't hear me while you're talking. I just received the instructions, so it was good to do a practice round. So when I give you the floor, you can't hear me talk anymore. We have to do it in turns. But now that we see your beautiful face, can you give us a short introduction of yourself anyway?
Sure. Hi, my name is Ghada Ibrahim. And basically, I'm from Palestine and I live in Gaza and work in Gaza. I work at Gaza Sky Geeks. It's one of the main programs of Mercy Corps International in Palestine, and I lead on the education component of the Code Academy program. So happy to be here.
Mag ik weer? So happy to have you here. Amazing. Thank you. So that was a good practice. Again, for everyone, when you speak, you can't hear me anymore. So if you want to ask a question, just unmute maybe and start talking because I don't see your hands either. So you can just unmute your microphone and ask the questions when I say that the floor is open to ask questions. Again, Ghada, thank you. And oh, maybe good to mention that I am from Afghanistan, so my main language is Farsi. So if I say your Arabic names with a very big Persian Farsi accent, my apologies, but I'm going to try to do my best to honor all your beautiful names. I also know my name is Sahar and not Sahar in Arabic, but I thought it was good to mention. So Pascal, let's start with you. Amazing to have you here today. We're not going to talk about small topics.
No, we're not actually. And it's really good to be here. And to all the participants, happy International Women's Day. It's great to be here and to be able to interact with you.
Pascal, can you shortly tell us about your ambassadorship? Because the title is Dutch Gender The title is Gender Equality and Women's Rights Ambassador.
Yes.
So tell us what that entails and why those two things in one title.
Well, I think having the ambassador role is it gives the significance that we, as the Dutch government, attach to both gender equality and women's rights. Not only in the Netherlands, but internationally. I work for the Foreign Ministry. I was also an ambassador in Mozambique, and I have a long background in development cooperation, combined with either the political side or the economic side. And what we do, and I think it's more needed now than ever, is to keep gender equality and women's rights high up on the international agenda. And why I say that it's needed now much more than ever, I think we see internationally a pushback on women's rights and agreed language of 25 years ago on gender rights, of gender equality, women's rights, LGBTI rights. And we need to push back the pushback. And I think also with COVID, we run a severe risk to backtrack 10, 15 years of development results.
And why is that? Can you shortly explain it?
Well, if you see now, for instance, because of COVID, women are much more affected than men. So women do more of the caretaking, girls drop out of school, there's hardly access to sexual and reproductive health and rights. So women face a huge burden because of COVID, and not only from the education and the health sector, but also because they have flexible jobs, they work in the informal sector. So also the economic independence and the economic empowerment, actually, that we all worked really hard on. We run the risk of backtracking the results we have. So I think now we're really at a turning point. We have to push and accelerate the efforts.
What I also, the COVID, sometimes I call it the cleansing period, because everything that was running behind is all now detoxing and coming out. So the symptoms are coming out that there was inequality and everything is being strengthened more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's also almost a blueprint of maps of what was already wrong.
Yeah, and it's like it's exacerbating.
Yeah,
it's much more clear.
Yeah.
And I think the vulnerabilities of women, but also vulnerable groups.
Yeah,
it's incredible, and it also has to do with power relations.
Yeah. So, in speaking of economical independency, and that the COVID has put that under pressure, could you give us a short insight of the independency of women in economics of the Netherlands today, and what the policies' ambitions are to change it?
Yeah, that's it's a good question. I think maybe going back a little bit in history, I think it was only in the late 60s that there was the second feminist movement asking for jobs for women, for contraceptives, for an end to discrimination between men and women in the
right to vote.
Yes, the right to vote was already the early. It was just late 1918, but this was then in the 60s after the Second World War, and then in 1975 it was the UN International Year of the Women, the first time since its establishment. And then the Netherlands, being a progressive modern country, thought, well, we have to speed up the efforts that we do, so we have to change the laws. We have to work on, for instance, legal and safe abortion, contraceptives in the health insurance.
But it's interesting you say progressive and modern country. Yet, if we look at the pay gap, and if we look into the numbers and the economical independency of women here in such a modern and progressive country, what does it say?
It is interesting, because I think there was this feminist movement and things changed, and there was an education campaign as well to get girls into school and also to choose maths and physics and science and to go into higher education. So I think if you look at the school system and the participation of girls, it's I think the majority in the higher education is girls, so that's really good. But then if you look at the professors, I think it's only 20% of the professors at universities are women, the rest is men. If you look at part-time working, which has huge advantages, especially if you have children and young children, or you have to look after your parents, maybe, it has all kinds of advantages. But you see in the Netherlands, still the pay gap that you mentioned, even with the government, within the own government, it's 20%. So a man in my position might earn 20% more than I do. And in the private sector, it's even more. So it's closing a little bit, but for a modern country, actually it's closing way too slow. And it's
so internationally in numbers, maybe because of those part-time contracts,
yes,
because part-time contracts have their pros and cons.
Yes.
But what it does in statistics is the emancipation falls behind, because
yes, it does.
You fall within a certain group and a leadership position and a full-time worker, and on which means the scale of emancipation goes up.
Yeah.
But I think the majority of women in the Netherlands has part-time contracts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in numbers, we're not doing that well internationally.
No,
are we
you're
even
right.
in the top 10?
No, we're not.
20?
No.
I'm sorry.
Probably my hesitation probably says enough.
Yeah.
No, but it's and also with the higher education. So I also have friends, actually my generation and my friends that went from working part-time to not working to following their husbands abroad and then coming back in a job market where they don't have a connection anymore. So no, I think on that level, we still have a lot of work to do. And it's not only by closing the pay gap, it's also by childcare and talking about peer pressure. But what women say
that also means if childcare is connected to women's emancipation in this country, that also says that still women are the caretakers of the child.
But that's the thing you see now in COVID. I think the moms are the homeschoolers.
Yeah. I see that around me as well.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how.
But but even in my own family, my own, I have 2 kids and I'm homeschooling my son.
Yeah. And is it without discussion?
No, it is with discussion, and my husband tried. Yeah, but he has less patience. I have less patience in the job. He has less patience with the kids.
Yeah. I want to hear from the participants. Who would like to react on the emancipation of women when it comes to having independency in your economical position in your country? Is there anyone who would like to speak up about this part? I'm sure one of you. There's let me check. Is Mona present?
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'm happy actually to be with you today. Thank you so much. And I'm enjoying the conversation so far.
Mona, can you tell us about, because I see in your very impressive biography that you are an entrepreneur and women's rights advocate. Can you tell us about the environment that you experience in your region when it comes to entrepreneurship, women and their economical position? Because you are also, you have the ambition to empower women to be economically independent in your region as well, as I've noticed. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for your question. And regarding my opinion about the MENA region and Palestine, I totally agree with what you've been guys discussing. So yes, regarding the higher education, the percentage of females, specifically, for example, in, let's say, in computer science programs is really high, and it's nearly the same as males. However, when we come to the private sector and the industrial sector, we could see that the gap in employment, it becomes really high. So the unemployment rate is 3 times more for females. So this is one of the things we're actually experiencing. And when we look at what we're trying to do to help, I think 2 things we need to work on is confidence and culture. And of course, this is also open for discussion, but it's the main 2 issues we're currently facing. What I'm working on, it's helping somehow in terms of building, let's say, a community in which females feel more confidence towards applying, let's say, to high-tech jobs or obtain role positions in the industrial sector. However, when it comes to the culture, I think we still need to do a lot of work on that. This is my point, and this is my input on your question.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your contribution. I forgot to ask you to also introduce yourself, so maybe you can do that in a minute. I want to ask you one follow-up question, because it's interesting that you say community to create more confidence. So back to the empowerment part. Is this community built based on the participation of women, and what is the role of men in this community?
Okay, so the way that the communities work, we need both females and males in this community, because at the end, this is what actually that represents the nations, and that represents the, like, let's say, the work environment. So even though the communities have like works more in empowering women, even in the term. So for example, I'm part of a community called Arab Women in Computing or Girls in Tech, even though it holds that kind of terminologies. However, we're very sure and concerned about having also males joining these communities, so we could actually also to understand the issues that females are facing and how they could work hand by hand with these males. It's also important for these males to understand the obstacles we're facing, so we could also come out with solution. So this is my input on what you're saying.
Thank you so much. Pascal, would you like to react on what Mona is saying?
Yeah, I think thank you very much, and nice to meet you, Mona. I think what strikes me is to also include the men. And how do we do that? And how do we create role models in that as well? We just had a panel meeting with a few ambassadors in the Netherlands that actually all explicitly said that they will never take part in a manel again. So it's
Manel,
just manel is male
panel.
panel, yes.
Yale male and pale.
Yes,
sometimes
which
say.
I think should be logical for everyone already. But it's good that they take steps, and they also ask what are the obstacles that you're running into as a woman diplomat or as a woman professional. And maybe on top of those communities that can be really supportive, I think it's also really important that women express what they want, what the ambition is, and what they want to achieve. So I know many women actually think that they will be noticed because of the good work they do and the results they get. But what I feel is that men are better in making explicit what they want or what they want in return of that. So I think maybe that's something.
I would like to jump in on that because when we talk about creating equal wages,
yes.
Equal pay, I noticed around me, and I would like to invite the participants to also give their opinion on this. When you negotiate your contract here in the Netherlands, for example, and this is where I want to hear the examples in different regions than here. Men are way more persistent and mostly aim to a higher number than women do. Why is that?
It's interesting. I also didn't negotiate, actually. When I joined the Foreign Service.
And why?
I don't know, because I didn't think about it, because nobody told me it was possible. It was just, I was happy that I got the job. It was my dream job. And what I feel is, and I suddenly feel slightly older, but I think people from my generation till maybe 10 years older, we just didn't do that. Nobody told us that we could negotiate on salary.
I hear gratitude.
Yeah, probably.
I hear a high
humbleness,
sense of humbleness, and I don't know if humble is the right word, but yes, and also a gratitude of thank you that I can get this opportunity because you're unique in your position, maybe.
Maybe.
Because
I was the first person in my family that went to university. So that probably, I mean, I had to break certain ceilings. And I just didn't have, when I entered the Foreign Service, I didn't have role models who guided me and said, well, Pascal, if you apply for a job, you can negotiate on salary. I think if I would join now, I would. And I advise people to do that.
Yeah.
But I think at that point, it was all still really new.
Yeah. Okay.
And not modest.
Yeah.
My parents always told me to be modest.
Yeah. And I think that's a little bit of a Dutch thing, if I may say, because I'm, well, not bicultural. There are many cultures, but multiple cultured, I'd say. And I can see, I observe that there's a modesty.
Yeah.
Van doe maar gewoon.
Ja, dan doe je al gek genoeg.
Be normal. I think that's a cultural
and don't stick
thing.
out. Yeah. Don't stick out above the crowd. Or blend in and
but men do.
Yeah, no, true.
So why women? And I would like to hear from the participants how they are experiencing this, what we're talking about negotiating your wage, negotiating your equal pay at the crucial moment when you are making contracts and even getting paid work. Because I saw a lot of biographies of the participants we have, highly educated, talented women who do a lot of voluntary work as activists. So is there anyone who would like to react? Just take the floor. Sure.
Yes, hi. Yeah, I
You
think
also introduce yourself?
yeah, I'm Sheikh Mohammed. I'm project supervisor for Wadi organization. I'm from Iraq, Kurdistan, Suleimania. And actually, in my personal opinion, I think this really goes back to how you are raised as a child. Because speaking from my experience as a kid, you are always told, like Pascal said, like not to stand out, not to be, above the crowd. That's just the way one is raised. A girl is raised here, and I think it's the same here, not just a Dutch like way. And same goes for us. We as women are always told to sit respectfully, not do this, not do that, don't get attention for yourself, avoid being in the spotlight. And these are all things, and things that you are it's embedded in you somehow. So I think that's just how it is, and we need to start breaking this mold. This has to really be broken somehow. And I think from our side, we are really, from my community at least, we are really taking baby steps in these regards.
Shok, thank you so much. I would like to hear a little bit more from you, because I know that you're active in the humanitarian field, especially, and you've been activistic, but also you have to be economically independent at a certain point. And how do you combine those two things? Because I know that even here in the Netherlands, in the modern progressive society, when I was being activistic and doing societal activities, it was unpaid a lot of times. Yeah. So how are you combining it, your life as an activist in Iraq?
Actually, I currently I am an employer for the University of Suleimania. I work there as well. And also my work there at Wadi, we are also working there really hard. And it's, yeah, I have to say, it's very difficult. It's not easy at all, actually. And not just not just me as an activist, because I don't yeah, you asked me the question, but I think it's just a very general problem. It's very hard for women to find jobs. And once they do find the job, you are more or less at the risk of other areas, other types of, like you said, not being equally paid. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Pascal, would you like to react to Shok?
Yeah, well, actually, I think there's quite some similarities. I think it has to do with how you're being raised and how you're being brought up. And I'm trying to teach both my daughter and my son a very different view. But actually, it's comforting that you are dealing with similar issues as well. And
what is comforting about it?
That we have to support each other to break that cycle, actually. And I always focus on the future generation, but also in this generation, I have to work 20 more years, so I better start negotiating for myself as well.
Yeah.
So I think if we can support each other to already try to break that cycle or that glass ceiling, or we can also learn along the way. We don't have to wait for the next generation to solve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And do you also have you experience in having conversations about how we can influence this inequality when it comes to economical positions? So one of the things that we talked about just now is negotiating when you set a contract. But what are the other factors that you can become financially independent and economically independent as a woman?
Well, maybe to tell a little bit more about the job that I'm doing. For me, it's really important to keep gender equality and women's rights on the international agenda.
Yeah.
So we invest in political leadership. We invest in economic empowerment for women and improving the economic situation of women through programs like Orange Corners or higher education programs or all those kind of things. We work to end sexual violence against women. And last, but not least important, to involve women in peace process. Because we believe if you invest in women, you can only achieve sustainable development. So what do? Is we also, for instance, going back to Mozambique, where I was ambassador, it's really important that women are entitled to land. In Mozambique, there was a law that you could only acquire land for your business or for your farm or for your shop.
You mean a land as in territory?
Yeah, territory, yes.
To buy a piece of land.
A piece of land.
Yeah.
And women didn't have rights to do that. So you had to do it via your husband. But then if your husband would leave you, you would be stuck without the land. So we worked on land titles for women because it's kind of like the fundament for independence. We invest in school systems, in mid-career trainings.
Yeah.
So we do all kinds of things. And what I really enjoyed is that we also work on female empowerment, female entrepreneurship.
Yes.
So what kind of skills do women need to become entrepreneurs? In a country like Mozambique, and maybe it's the same in your countries, working for the government is seen as the best job because it's stable. It has the most prestigious or the best reputation, and you will have a pension. And what we try to do is to talk with the families of young women as well, that it might be more lucrative also for the long run to have a small shop or to become a designer or to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And not everybody can work with the government.
To even make it, so if I can make a summary, so you even make it a possibility.
Yes.
That it's a possibility that young women and women can have aspirations to be independent and to own something.
And we had a beautiful program in Orange Corners for entrepreneurs. And
can
we
you
made
tell
sure
what Orange Corners is? Because I'm...
Yeah, it's a concept that the Dutch government, the embassies, the private sector and a local partner invest in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And in Mozambique, we had a few Dutch companies, a Mozambican bank, a local partner, Idea Lab, and they would organize a specific training of 6 months or a year with masterclasses from the companies. And we, as an embassy, provided the linkages with other donors, but also the policy level and the government to establish a new generation of entrepreneurs.
Wow.
And we focused really on female entrepreneurs. And what was really, really special is the first tier of entrepreneurs, we also had a big graduation because some of the entrepreneurs actually didn't want to tell their parents that they were going to apply for the program, and they participated in the program. And then with the graduation, we had music, we had speeches, it was just really big.
Yeah,
and
I can tell by your expression that you're very proud.
Oh yeah, no, I'm
project.
very proud. It's actually one of my proudest programs.
Yeah.
But for the parents to see the kids actually, or the kids, or the young adults going for entrepreneurship with a graduation and a diploma and the recognition, actually it changed them because the parents were really nervous for their kids to become an entrepreneur. So
because it's the first generation making a revolution, perhaps.
Yeah.
Speaking of entrepreneurship, I don't know if we have present, but Gada Ibrahim, are you present?
Yes.
Let me see. I see the names here. Yeah, I see Gada Ibrahim. Oh yeah, I saw you in the beginning.
Right.
Yes, there you are. I can tell by your profile that you are working on the employment of female empowerment, and you're an engineer architect. Can you tell us more about your role in that when it comes to entrepreneurship and empowering women to also become entrepreneurs and starting and developing a business for themselves? And how do you experience it there?
Yeah, so basically the area I work in right now is basically tech education. So that starts with, enabling, it's like an economic enabler, and starting at the very beginning of it from like women, for example, like statistics or speaking of Gaza in specific, every year universities in Gaza graduate around like 2,000 CS, like computer science and IT related grad. And like about 60% of those are women. But when it comes to, the gap in technology and like in the job market is very high. It's not just in Gaza and Palestine, I know it's all over the world, but it also quite significant here. So I think starting from that, like, and so much of what Pascal has said, we kind of also like follow that model of how do we make this, vibrant tech hub or community welcoming to those women, and not only to those women, but also to their families and their parents, because they, like, parents and families can be an obstacle here, because, here in our tech hub, it's it's men and women also coming together and working together. While we come from a conservative society that, we usually have, women studying at schools and men and boys studying in different schools. There's always this gender segregation all over, like growing up until you get to university, and some universities here also like have this gender segregation. So it is a challenge to convince these parents to see like how this tech education, like learning coding and having these skills would would be transformational to their daughters, and they will become economically independent throughout this very much 6 months of learning something, either like starting from scratch or also building on their university degree. So it is crucial to like take that into account, that building knowledge and building skills that maybe universities and schools and even life experience does not build. And that this what we're doing into account, and then like building on it, and women would get matched or hired by companies, whether locally in Gaza or in Palestine, like in the West Bank, or internationally. So that, and also people can have they can not only like work in as an employee in companies, but they can also go to like business and build their own startups. And we had this happening before. So it's everything, right? It's like as if you're starting from childhood and going up. And also like I also have 3 kids, and I see that I see like how society and even like my extended family most of the time affecting how like their perception of life and how they see themselves, how they see the opposite gender. Like, as small as like wearing pink or wearing red, like my little boy would be like, no, this is like a girl color. I won't wear it. So yeah, all of that like coming together, and also like, through the education system and through our organized institutions, it's all affecting like how we exist and how we represent ourselves, and how we see like other women and other men and how they see us. So yeah, it's lots of work.
Thank you so much. It was very enlightening what you said, and what I hear from your story is you have micro revolutions and you have bigger revolutions, right? And micro revolutions happen at home by even the stereotyping and the way you raised your children, and how you've been raised in stereotyping from color into stereotyping from who brings the tea and who makes the food. But also bigger revolutions, that the fact that women are so prominent in education systems, in the tech companies and tech engineering. But then when you look who is in the leadership position, there was a book of the CEO of Facebook that I read once, that she went to have a meeting in New York with a top man. I don't know, it doesn't matter what his name is, but she said, can I go to the bathroom? And he didn't even know where the female bathroom was. Yeah. That's how few women there are when it comes to the top, where you enter the spaces after you have a seat in your education environment. So, but I also saw Yara nodding along very much so when Gada was talking. Yara Al-Mauti, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Say your name correctly and introduce yourself shortly, and tell us about your position, because I saw in your biography that you do a lot with Arab Business Women's Network as well.
Good evening, everybody. I was nodding actually with Ghada because it's the same situation in Jordan. In Jordan, 65% of the higher education goes to ladies, while they only constitute less than 20% of the working force. So the comparison is really ridiculous. Actually, I come from an industry in which the wages are not the gap in the wages is not very big, because it's a female dominant industry. I come from the pharmaceutical industry. Pharmaceutical industry is a female dominant industry. It's one of the few industries in the world that are really dominant by ladies. The pharmaceutical industry in Jordan is a very solid industry in the region, and most of the companies in the whole region, they are in partnership with the Jordanian companies. So we have a lot of females as CEOs. We have a lot of females as senior managers. We have quality unit heads, engineering managers. Me, myself, I run engineering projects, mega engineering projects for the pharmaceutical industry. So I don't see it on a daily basis, but I see it in another way. I see it with the young females that come to make internships and that I mentor. Most of these ladies, they finish their education and they are highly skilled. But when it comes to the entering the working market, there are different sides that will encourage them to not work. Okay, there is this pressure from the husband. This pressure comes from the family of the husband. This pressure that comes, that this shaming attitude that if she is a mother, she shouldn't be working because this time is taken from her motherhood time. Okay, so this type of shaming is high here. I don't know about the other ladies, but in Jordan, there is I have recruited a lot of young, brilliant engineers. Pharmaceutical engineering takes 5 years of education, 1 year in Germany. You have to work, you have to practice, you have to do a lot of training, and then you come home, you are married to the love of your life, and you get the first children, and all of a sudden your mother-in-law wouldn't allow you to go to work. As simple as that. Okay, and all the work that you have done is thrown in the air, in the thin air. Okay, so I've seen it a lot. There is a lot of pressure, a lot of shaming, and this is combined with the gap of wages. And in a very, very expensive country like Jordan, this will only make logic for the ladies to just quit and stay at home, and they don't think about working again. When I graduated, we were 18 engineer in the section, 18 female engineer, okay? 18
Thank you, Yara. Thank you so much. I'm sorry. I will give you the floor later, but I just really wanted to ask Pascal to react, because when you were speaking about those traditional roles of men and women, interestingly enough, we keep mentioning that the Netherlands is a progressive and modern society. But Pascal, I saw so much recognition in your face. Can you tell us more about what your reaction to Yara? Because I saw you here nodding along.
Yeah, maybe it's not the mothers-in-law, but I feel that there's quite a lot of peer pressure, actually.
Even your friends. It's not just
even my friends. Yeah. No. And my husband, he quit his job twice to follow me abroad, and he actually got peer pressure and shamed by his friends. He's a chemical engineer. And he got from his friends, "Are you sure that you will follow your wife?" And also with my group of secondary school friends, we have an app group, and it was really interesting. They said, "Well, one of the friends said, well, we're going to work 4 days a week from 9 to 5." And then another friend said, "Yeah, well, everybody who works 5 days is just completely strange, and there's probably something wrong with them." And I was just like, "Well, I'm in your app group. I'm working full time."
Yeah.
And also, it's men and women still. And when I applied to become an ambassador more than 5 years ago now, I got from one of the senior management people say, "So what does your husband think about that?" And I was just like, "Well, he's really supportive. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here pitching myself to this position." And I said, "Well, do you ask the men in my generation, same question, what their wife thinks of it?" So it's still, and we're doing it to each other as well. And I think women should really support other women. And I think in the Netherlands, I feel that there's still some progress to be made.
Yes, because you're being shamed still for how do you create an environment that you're not being shamed for wanting to work full time, and also at a certain point not being shamed from the feministic point of view that you don't want to work full time and stay at home. So the autonomous freedom and movement that you're allowed to have as a woman, either to work full time or not. How do we enter a balanced society?
Well, I think we have to believe it for ourselves. I think that's really important. When I had my 2 kids, I worked 4 days a week, because I found it important to also be with them when they were really young. But it's something that you have to believe it's a good thing. So it's also about self-empowerment, about self-belief. Mm-hmm. And then when they grew older, I wanted to go back full-time. And that's also my choice. And if I believe in my choices, then it's easier for the surrounding to also believe in those choices. So I think that's the way to start, to believe in your own choices and to do a little bit of self-empowerment.
Yeah, but then still, we talk about self-empowerment. What if we fix the self-empowerment and the ambition of women? And we already can establish women are very highly educated. Also in the Netherlands, we are in the majority of more highly educated than men, but fewer women are there in positions. So if we take care of all of that, then there's still the economical issue that there is a pay gap, and the economical issue that we are, even if we're in the same position as men, we're still running behind and are still fighting our way in. I would like to hear from Amal Nassar from Yemen. You are an economist, I saw. Can you give your view, Amal, in apart from empowerment and apart from cultural switches and changes and revolutions, what can we do on an economical level to empower women as well, to create those equal positions in society?
Well, actually, it depends on the context, and I'm loving the discussion so far, but I realize that we have so many different contexts here. Like Netherlands, I live in Germany. I know it's also a different world between here and there, but also within Arab countries, we have very complex landscape. So if I would speak about Yemen, the bar is a little bit low, or like the lowest, okay? So women empowerment, economic empowerment, like the pay gap will come at a later stage, okay? We need to start by engaging more women in education or in the labor market and so on, or protect them from the implications of the current war that is going on in Yemen. But speaking of the wage gap, I really believe in legislations, because working on good intentions, that didn't bring anything so far. So even if you go and you negotiate a salary, you need a certain level of transparency from your employer to know what is your range. But without having this information, we're just talking into the air. So we need to work more on legislation. And like if you apply this on an Arab context, you have certain countries with solid legislative systems like Jordan or Egypt. They have certain level of like, you can maneuver a little bit politically speaking and push forward to more women empowering legislations. Whereas in other countries, you have, you have to really see the context every time you think about women economic empowerment.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Amal. It really got me thinking about also where I am from. I live here more than 20 years in the Netherlands, but I'm from Afghanistan, who is still currently in conflict for as long as I am born, actually. And the wave of feministic movement and emancipation there is completely different than into the society that I live here in the Netherlands. But we are dealing with one and the same thing when we are going to reach the part where you have to have an economical position at a certain point. Amal, thank you for pointing out that the waves are different when you are from a conflict area, and some basic rights, women's rights, have to be established first. But if we talk about, and that's the difficult thing, because we have to talk about so often when we talk globally, there are some basic women's rights that still need to be established. We don't talk about the legislation that Amal is talking about, of how can we, through policy, create transparency for women, that when they are sitting there, when they have overfought so many waves of feminism and emancipation, and you're at that table, you're making that contract, what policies and legislations could help for that company or that party on the other side of the table to be transparent in what your right is as a woman when you're negotiating, what your right is as a woman in your economical position? What can influence us to stand stronger when we're at that point?
I think we have elections coming up in 2 weeks, or less than 2 weeks. I think in a week almost. And one of the party leaders, Lilianne Ploemen from the Labour Party, she's actually making an election point out of this. There's a Norwegian model that. Yeah, I think it's a Norwegian model that it's a legislation that. Almost obliges company actually to be transparent about what do they pay to the men and to the women, so that that it's easier because we don't have the information. I don't know what my male colleagues, because I think in the Netherlands, talking about what you earn, it's almost a taboo. We don't have taboos about abortion or sex or other things, but talking about wages or what your income is actually
a big taboo here.
A big taboo here.
Interestingly.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So I think a legislation from that point of view, that a company has to make transparent or insightful what they pay to the male officers and female officers, would help us a lot.
Yeah.
Because there's a taboo around it and I don't have the details. So in order to be able to negotiate, actually this would be something.
That's very interestingly arranged through the patriarchal system, isn't it? That there's a taboo on talking about income.
It is
because it's paying in the how do you say it? It's in the benefit of still keeping that inequality intact.
Yeah,
if
but
there's
also
no transparency.
from the power relations. Maybe because it's also to protect the elite, what they are making, and I think it goes maybe even further than that.
Wow, yeah, that's also interesting.
Keeping the power structures in play.
Yeah. So to round up this part on economics, I want to hear from Maha as well. Are you there, Maha? Mahashira, you have a business hub for women, and She Works is the only private business hub for women founded and run by women. Can you tell us more about your thoughts on this discussion?
Okay, first of all, hi everybody. I wanted to comment about talking about the learning more about the salary and negotiating the wages, whether it's in government or in the private sector. I learned a trick a long time ago because I was, women in my generation were a bit new in some of the private sector and some of the private fields. I mean, women in Saudi Arabia until 2005 were only allowed to work in like 3 different sectors, which is education, and it's very segregated, only women. That's why they needed more women in the workforce, in the education sector, in universities and schools, because they teach and educate women only in these schools and universities, and also in the medical field, which is not a segregated sector, but that's another story. And in the banking sector, they started hiring women back in 2003 or even a bit earlier, but also in specific fields like retail and operation. But then they involved more women in the head office. And I remember when I first joined the bank back in 2003, I didn't know my salary and I thought that I was underpaid. So the only trick that I got was I had a friend in HR who gave me a benchmark of what is the salary that I should get. They had an average, a minimum, and a maximum. And afterwards, like many years, I still use that trick. I asked my HR friends, and most of them right now currently are females. They show me certain websites and certain places where I can get like, what is the benchmark of, for example, project manager in Saudi Arabia working in the private sector or working in the government sector. And this is how I get like an idea of how much I should negotiate. So I don't feel that I'm being underpaid than a man. But in Saudi in general, we don't have that gap. I noticed that the gap, like also Pascal mentioned, is that once you have a child and you lose track and you lose that connection and you start all over again, then you get the gap. It's not about the experience, it's about this gap of being a mother, the maternity leave or the break that you take if you have multiple kids and you don't have daycares or you don't have anybody to help you with the care. This is when the gap actually happens. And this happened to me because I also resigned from the bank for some time. And when I came back to the workforce, I was paid like young juniors. And that was not the case because my experience, my skills was way better. It was way different. But it's just that gap that I lost. That gap in the work field. But going back to your question, can you repeat the question? Or what do you want to know exactly about the hub?
So interested in what you were saying that I almost forget my own question. But I think I was talking about to ask your insight, your expertise on how we can empower women once they have achieved the position of negotiating. So you actually answered the question. I was saying to Pascal when you were talking, this is so interesting because we sometimes forget that women run behind simply because they miss certain years in their career. And I sometimes say it's even more progressive to have children at a younger age, because you can have your career peak, in being in the top of your career when you're still a young mom, when your kids are independent and you're 35. And if your kids are not babies, if you have babies when you're 35, 38, it's more difficult because you run behind when you're in the, well, basically when you're supposed to be at the top of your career. So missing those years are eminent. And that's also, and then you have to start all over again sometimes as women. But equality is also having a seat at the table beyond economics. Yeah. This is such an interesting conversation that I can keep on talking about the economics. Maybe we should bring that into the panel discussion. I'm also learning. And I still need to have, I don't have kids yet, so I'm taking notes. But equality is also having a seat at the table beyond economics. It's also about peace and security. Yes. Also got me thinking in Amal's story that the wave of feminism is different also from what region you're from and what legislation you have in your country. Can you give us a short insight in the position of women currently in the field of security and peace internationally, and maybe what you've already done on that field from your function as an ambassador?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I know that Anna Floor will probably talk about that at the panel as well. I looked up some of the numbers. I think we all know that peace is more sustainable if women are part of the peace process and are part of the solutions. But between 1992 and 2019, women constituted on average only 13% of the negotiators, 6% of the mediators, and 6% of the signatories in major peace processes worldwide. And about 7 out of every 10 peace processes did not include women, mediators, or signatories at all.
And what about the victims in those conflict areas and the position of women?
Yeah, well, there you have it. It's completely off balance. And I'm not an expert, but it might explain why certain peace process you have to do over and over and over again, because it's not sustainable in the long run. But the voices of women, what we do as the Netherlands is we want to invest in women peace builders, in civil societies, to make the voices of the women, of the victims, as you say, heard. But also if you have a refugee camp, many women and girls are raped. And what kind of services do you provide for those women? If you only have men at the table, it's a completely different perspective. Also looking at toilets, at menstruation pads. It's about so many things.
Actually, there was a news, it's crucifying, but I think it should always be mentioned today. But in the Moria camp, refugee camp in Europe, a couple of days ago, there was a pregnant woman who set herself on fire because she was mentally, severely being under pressure. They thought they were able to go to Germany because she already had 3 kids in the camp, and their flight got canceled from that refugee camp, and then she set herself on fire. These are the realities we have to deal with.
But also in Ethiopia, rape is being used as a weapon. And we've seen it more. And in Mexico, every so many hours, a woman is being murdered just because she's a woman. So it's terrible facts. And
but we know these facts for a long time now. We know these facts that women are suffering. We know these facts that women are not only under physical pressure, but also under mental pressure. Yeah. But we also keep saying that without women, there will never be world peace.
No, it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
We invest.
So what can we do to amplify the voices at those tables?
Well, what we see is both in diplomacy, making this case a lot. We have the National Action Plan 1325, which is for us the key document, which we work together with the Defense Ministry and also civil society, to include their voices and the voices of the members of Women Equals Men into that plan. Also to make our police, our national police, more aware about women's rights. So I think what we should practice what we preach. We also do it in the Netherlands, but we invest also a substantial amount of money, 40 million euros in the next 4 years, in women, peace and security projects in 10 different countries which are affected by conflict. And we do it through civil society because we feel that those are the voices that needs to be amplified in peace processes. So we do both diplomacy, Also in our foreign policy, we take it on board, but we also invest heavily in grassroots and civil organizations.
Is there, do any of the participants would like to react when it comes to female positions being in the front lines, when it comes to the conflict areas, but when it comes to the real negotiations and having a seat at the table with the peace and security negotiations, there's still a lack of women? I haven't heard Ravan, and she's raising her hand. Thank you. Ravan Khalfal, let me see. You can just unmute and start talking.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me very well? To those who don't know me, I'm Rawan Khalfallah, and I'm from Tripoli, Libya. We've been witnessing conflict for 10 years now. So I think I have a lot to say about women's position in the peace process. At the beginning of the session, everyone was talking about economic empowerment and then the challenges. While I do agree, but to us in Libya, it's economic empowerment for women. I'm seeing it as more of an entryway towards women's getting their rights, because it's working very well here, though we're still having all these challenges. But comparing to having women on the table, it's a more longer and a more bumpier road. Lastly, like in the last couple of weeks, we had a new government here in Libya, and the head of the government was at some point saying that because of the patriarchal nature of society and our culture, we can't have women. And after 10 years of working to advance more women on the table and in the negotiation table, that came as quite as a slap in the face. So more women activists put their efforts together to push for women representation in the new government. And now we do have a couple of names that it does not match the quota, but at least we do have women's name. When it comes to women's participation in decision-making, the way I see it, it doesn't only fall on the national governments in the conflict countries. In the case of Libya, we've been in conflict, like I said, since 2011. And the international community were the lead mediators of the peace process. And we've seen a lot of parties from the international community also preaching their promises to include women. For instance, the international community here were the ones who were responsible for the peace talks, for conferences, for a lot of negotiations. And when you come and look closely to the table, it's only men. So we do blame the national government. At some point, we also need to take a look at the international lead mediators who are working in these conflict areas as well. And at the same time, it's when we came and analyzed why women aren't there, there's a whole systemic exclusion that's happening. So there's so many components to take consideration into why women aren't at the table. And when women are in the table, they're pushed backward. So if we're having like a one row of chairs, they would be in the second row of chairs, not even in the front. And if they were in the front row of chairs, they're not even allowed to speak. And if they were allowed to speak, they're not even allowed to take their opinions seriously. So there's so many steps to take that even when you manage to put a woman there, so many obstacles that needs to be untangled as well. And here it's like I said, it's quite a bumpy road to reach. We've been working on women's political participation and their inclusion in the peace process for 5 years now. It's fair to say that there is a lot that needs to be done.
Thank you so much, Ravan. Thank you. And I think you also mentioned the responsibility we have on, is there? Oh, okay, sorry. I saw break with big letters. I thought you guys were all gone. But we need to round up and then we can continue on this part again in the panel. Thank you so much. I heard Ravan say international responsibility. Yeah. Of course, we have a national responsibility when you look at the countries. But what struck me too, when there was the NOP resolution 2 months ago, I was there as well to launch it. And I asked the ministry, someone from the ministry, why are there women not at the negotiations, also with the Taliban now currently in Afghanistan? And the word culture was mentioned. But then I think to myself, of course, culture and national, but what about the international impulses? Because there's so much money, you said 40 million, plus you going into these projects in the grassroots and civil society part. But what do the men in those top layers on an international field do in order for those women, when they are speaking, as Rowan said, are taken seriously? Because we are not giving the right example as well. When we look at our own country, when women talk, are they be taken seriously? We need to listen to these women when we create those spaces at the table, because what is the value that they bring into those peace negotiations? Can you maybe tell your thoughts on this? I know it's a difficult question, but it's what Roman says. It's maybe the tip of the iceberg.
No, it resonates with me as well, actually. Two things that came into my mind. I saw from quite close by the peace negotiations in Mozambique. And there was one really powerful woman involved from Kenya, but she was on the second row. Even though behind the scenes, she was probably calling the shots, but it was a guy from Switzerland actually being in the pole position. And also on how do we take women seriously? We have an international ambassadors group of ambassadors for gender equality and women, peace and security. And Norway just nominated a man actually as the ambassador for women, peace and security. I would love to raise this topic with them. We have 15 now and it's expanding, which is really good. But it is something that we as an international community are obliged to do. We have to push for women to be at the table. And when they are at the table, and Norway is such a significant country because they are experts in many of the peace processes and they are at the table, but to make sure that women are listened to. And women have a different way of talking than men. And you can see that in many places. But we have to make sure that they have the space or they actually, and to speak, and that they will be listened to. And you see that with international negotiations in the European Union as well. Men take the floor first. They have 2 or 3 points. Women sometimes say the same things, but are listened to differently. So I think it's a part of the speaking culture in general between all men and women, actually.
And it's interesting because you say that Norwegia, for example, is one of the experts when it comes to those peace and security negotiations. But can you call yourself an expert if you don't practice what you preach?
Yeah, that's a very fair question. I'm saying Norway because they are involved in many of the peace processes around the world. And they have a long-standing experience.
But even the Netherlands, for example, if you look at Europe, we crown ourselves as the experts internationally. But do we practice what we preach by taking women seriously and let them speak first, especially when it comes to gender violence?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And I think in the Netherlands,
maybe an ambition for you. And
but it's same. I mean, in the Netherlands, we talk a lot about gender equality and the importance also from the economic, but also from the human rights point of view. But we've never had a female prime minister, nor a finance minister, nor a foreign minister.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we have to work on that as well. I think you're not really credible if you've never had a female prime minister or foreign minister for that matters. And you use it as one of your spearheads in your foreign policy. So it's time
it's good to round up on practicing what we preach. Yeah. Thank you so much, Pascal.
Thank you.
Do you have any final words for the participants?
No, it was really nice to meet you all. And I know that you are seeing Bahia, one of my colleagues, the human rights ambassador, in the Hague talks as well. I'm very happy to hear this is a 2 years project, and I'm hopeful that maybe next year we can meet in person. So for me, it's a start of a conversation, and I'm also very inspired and encouraged by your stories. So let's keep on sharing, and I wish you a great 2-year adventure, and best of luck.
Yes, thank you so much, Pascal.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for participating on this part. We will have a 10-minute break, and then we will come back for the second part of the panel. Take a drink, go to the bathroom, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you so much. Welcome back. I hope all the participants are also back. We now have Anna Floor from Women Equals Men, as well as Rix Herklots from The Next Women With Us. Before we head into the discussion, maybe nice to already mention something about the organizations that you're from. Anna Floor, you first. Can you tell us a little bit more about Women Equals Men?
Is a member-based organization of development organizations, peace-building organizations, feminist and women's rights organizations. And together we do a lot of lobbying advocacy for women's rights implementation and gender equality worldwide.
Thank you. Thank you. And small topics.
Small topics, yes. And oh yeah, we also coordinate the National Action Plan 1325 together with the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Sorry, you went very quick. You're coordinating?
The National Action Plan.
National Action Plan?
Yes, 1325
on the UN resolution.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
On women, peace, security. We are the civil society coordinator, and we coordinate the Dutch National Action Plan together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
That is how to implement the National Action Plan within the Netherlands.
Within the Netherlands and also by the Netherlands through diplomatic missions, military interventions, but also civil society organizations that work with their partners locally in different countries.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Rix.
Tough act to follow. So I'm the director of The Next Women. We're an international network of women entrepreneurs and investors, especially the combination of the two, because we see the challenges that the entrepreneurs face, but also the need for more women to start investing to also be able to change that balance. We offer a community access to knowledge, network, and financial means. And we do this also with a local chapter in Tunis. So that might be interesting for the ladies in today's session as well. And we're currently looking at not only helping the individual, but also challenging the system a little bit more.
Okay, so I hear a lot of empowerment as well that we just spoke about.
Definitely,
thank you.
Yeah.
For the participants, I spoke with the organization, and I heard that sometimes your hand is going up in the system, but you can just unmute and start talking. That's the quicker way to interact. And I want to hear even more from you than the first part. So if you have anything to say, just don't be humble, because that was also a subject of today. We're not going to be humble. Just unmute and start speaking if you think you have an interesting point to follow up on. What we're going to talk about with the panel in this second part is, what does leadership for women mean today? Who would like to start to share their thoughts? And also another interesting thought is, it's of course International Women's Day. And for me personally, it unfolds itself differently every year. What does International Women's Day mean for you today as opposed to maybe the years before? Does it have a different meaning every year? Anna Floor, maybe you can start by...
Yeah. Well, I think this year is special because, and I think it was already mentioned, there's the elections in the Netherlands for our parliament. And there recently has been launched or published a report on misogyny, so on harassment of women political leaders, but also women that want to be active in politics, and much about, so the recent days, really much about what is happening on the internet, and also is really about the position of women leaders in the politics. So how safe do you feel as a leader, as a political leader, or just as a young, feminist or woman to access the political arena and to stay there, and how active can you be as a woman?
So just for the insight of the participants, 17th of March is our election day here in the Netherlands. And for the first time in history, we have more women, I think the most majority, but still not the majority. It's not even half, but we have more female leaders as party leaders. So who are on the number one and maybe be able to be elected as prime minister. Yeah, Rix is saying
Fingers
here's
crossed.
hoping.
Yeah.
But even the last election, it was still a long way to go. I think there was just one woman every debate between 4, 5, 6 men in every political debate here in the Netherlands. And what you're touching upon is how are these women who are becoming more and more as party leaders being treated on the internet and by the people in society here in the Netherlands.
Yeah, so not even only the party leaders, but also just members of parliament or women in the city councils
who are already in political arena,
or who would like to enter the political arena, and are on the lists and therefore also more out in the open. I think there's a lot of pushback nowadays on women's rights and gender equality, and we see that now in the political arena in the Netherlands, also entering more and more. So that is really a topic of International Women's Day now. So the safety of women to become a leader, and how can they be protected better, and also how can we change the cultural and also the gender norms on how we perceive women in politics or women in strong positions.
Yeah. So that's what International Women's Day for you personally also means today. To keep thinking about the healthy and safe environment of women having
and how
ambitions.
To support and be also how to create that network of solidarity with the support mechanisms that we also need to create and uphold, I think.
I think in the Netherlands, before I tell what International Women's Day means to me, is that we really have the paradigm of being too successful, where topics such as gender equality aren't being treated as seriously as they are. And we don't believe as a society here within the Netherlands that we have an issue when it comes to gender equality or inequality. Going into the new law that finally makes the companies sign on to having a 30% women in their boardrooms, and the pushback that still gets, conversations that I have on a day-to-day basis with women, with people just saying like, is it really necessary? Had Dutch women, but you like to work part-time. So is it the issue of our society, or is it you as women?
Your personal lack of ambition.
Your personal lack of ambition. So that there's so much more to women in leadership in the Netherlands, and then also getting into those positions, for which it means, this day is so important still. Even in a well-evolved country as the Netherlands.
Even is an interesting word. Yeah. So what does International Women's Day mean to you, Rix?
Well, I think for me, it's always a double-sided day. I see the need for amplification of issues around gender equality about women. But we always, as an organization, really take the stance of every day should be International Women's Day, and not just that one day, but also the other 364 days. And that's what we're doing. And also not really getting into the mass of events and stories already around that. But this year, also because of the elections, but also really because of the theme, Choose to Challenge this year. It's really something that addresses me or that speaks to me on a personal level, because I do really see, especially also here, the activation that's part of this conversation, the active choice to be a challenger, to not go along with the system just the way it is. Because
so that's already a revolution to you, maybe, that there's more activation in that we don't think it's normal anymore.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
We're being louder, perhaps.
Yeah, and also stating that it is something that needs to be active still. If we just go along with the way the world works and the progress that we're making on a natural pace. What is it according to the World Economic Forum, 257 years before we really dare? So we need action to accelerate.
And legislation, as we talked before. And it actually makes me think about what Amal from Yemen brought in, is that there are different waves of emancipation. Mm-hmm. You have the wave of having the security and peace and the basic human rights that you deserve as a woman, your women's rights. And then there's the next wave and next wave. And what is interesting to me always, maybe then I can add what I value about International Women's Day is I'm 30 years old now, and I started in also a political arena when I was 19 and 20 here in the Netherlands. And for 10 years now, I'm going along with this conversation. And coming from a country where those basic women's rights, there's still a fight to be fought. I think sometimes I'm even more frustrated in the Netherlands because I think there's an abundance of freedom on paper in legislation, but the conversation that we need to have continuously is making people aware that there's inequality and why, if the numbers are so clear, we still start the conversation of convincing and creating awareness that equality is important. Because if we keep starting the conversation there, we're not talking about the how, but about that inequality exists, about the existence of it. I think
you have a very good Trevor Noah from the Late Show.
Yeah,
he has a part of that in his and not about feminism or gender equality, but about racism, where
exactly.
he says
also the same topic on racism. You still keep talking about, does it exist? Does it happen?
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about how do we prevent it?
Yeah.
How we create the equality?
Yeah, because what he says is he prefers the racism of South Africa because of the apartheid. It's the conversation is not, is it here? Are you a racist? No, it's we are racists as a nation.
Yeah.
How are we going to solve this?
It's almost like coming out of the closet.
Yeah.
I feel like the Netherlands sometimes has to come out of the closet and say,
I totally agree.
yes.
I think therefore also it's interesting that this research came now on misogyny. That it created a lot of how do you say that, a lot of debate also within the political parties, even in the political parties that kind of denied that there was a gender inequality and that there was a pushback on women leaders, and they now they cannot deny it anymore,
but they still do.
Yes, but you can also, so there's also research that this kind of harassment and also really hate, misogyny is also such a nice terminology, but it's really hate against women.
Yeah, it's
really hate.
Yeah.
And there is research done that in society where there is gender inequality, that there is space for hate against women, for femicide, for cyber harassment, for all these, because we don't find it normal to have women in those leadership positions. And this is really a symptom that we need to acknowledge now as Dutch society. So, there is this problem and we need to deal with it. We need to change. Yeah.
Do the participants would like to react? You can just unmute your microphone and react to what Anna Floor just said. Very interestingly, we talk about these big terms such as patriarchy and misogyny when we're basically talking about women's hate and denigrating comments being made on women. How do you experience it in your region when it comes to perhaps the political arena or on several layers of society when it comes to women's hate?
Hate against women.
Against women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you clarify more? What do you mean with hate?
The research here in the Netherlands, just because it's the elections, have shown on Twitter. They took Twitter and took several social media platforms, but also letters being written to the political parties, female party leaders being in the front lines. They are basically being, how do you say it, cursed at. There are hate messages towards them just by the mere fact that they are women, rape messages about their bodies. And also, if you're a woman of color, you have also hate on the fact that you're a woman and that you're a woman of color. There's a female party leader in the Netherlands who is married to a Palestinian man, and she's being discriminated against because she's a woman and she's married to a specific certain man. So it goes on. And also, questions being raised continuously on women in top functions about how they are going to manage to combine their ambitions and being in the political arena, or when you're in a company, with having a family, or questions about your outfit, questions about how much makeup you wear. So all the questions are basically based on your body. what you carry, your gender, how you portray yourself, being a woman, and also the color of your skin. And that's basically a summary of hate on women here in society. And how do you experience that in your region? The reactions to women in politics.
I mean, after the revolution in 2011, we had something that's very similar when elections started to take place. And when women candidates started to do their media campaigns, they would do like these billboards or like they would share ads of their faces and their like political campaigns in the street and so on and so on. And then you would find people ripping the faces of their posters or ripping the faces of women on their billboards. And until at some point, like there, you would see like campaigns involving women politicians where you would find the male candidates and then the women who are represented in a black shade, as if it's a person, it's a woman, but she doesn't want to show her face. That's on a very that's like one of the things that are very unfortunate. I mean, even if the woman chooses to show her face, she would still get her pictures ripped off from the street until they stop doing it. But I mean, women still sometimes do it, but then again, it's very dangerous to put it out there or pointless. And at some street, it's not even the political campaigns. It's also like there is a wedding hall in my street where there is like a picture of this bride, and they would tear the picture of a woman from the wedding hall. It's so ridiculous to even to think about it. Why would someone would do that? And yet women persevere. They do want to enter the political arena. They do want to become part of the decision-making process and so on and so on, even though it's life-risking at some point here in Libya. We have a parliament member who spoke against war a couple of years ago that she got abducted and we don't know whether she's alive or dead. We have so many women activists who's been killed just because they spoke up. Getting associated with the government sometimes here, it's very dangerous or very unwelcomed, that sometimes women and girls choose not to be politically active because it draws so much attention, that it would take a lot of courage, that it's not a good place for women to be. So I can definitely understand the amount of hatred. This is why when I was talking earlier, I was saying that it's very difficult to push women to participate in the decision-making process. It's very difficult for men to open spaces for them as well. So it's coming from both ways. It's men preventing women to participate, and it's also women being too afraid to participate as well. So I mean, but the thing is, we do have women, the good part, we do have women who want to participate, who want to take part in the decision-making process, despite all the dangers, despite that means that they might get killed one day. Despite all of that, they still want to be part of the peace process here in Libya. And this is really refreshing and good thing to say, to see. And this takes me to the question, like what the International Women's Day means to me. I've been seeing like all my social media newsfeed full of women activists, women politicians, girls. They're all pushing forward for enhancing the women's situation here in Libya more and more.
Thank you so much.
I would like to add a
so much to react on. Would you like to react on Avan's?
Yeah, well, of course, I recognize much of what you were saying. Amal, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nee,
Ravan, yes. So as Women Equals Men, we, while also coordinating the National Action Plan 2025, we also have many discussions with local leaders and with women peace builders on how difficult it is to be active and also feel protected and supported by the international community. For example, one example is in Afghanistan right now. We all know that there is really, when it came clear that there would be a deal with the Taliban, many of the women felt that they would be in more danger even, and that the international community would kind of, well, not support them anymore as much as they were supported in the past. Whether that's true or not, but that was really, you know, there's a lot of people and women especially that are very active in politics or that had very high positions that are fleeing the country right now. And they feel unprotected. They don't want to flee the country, but they have to because there's death threats to themselves, to their families. And there's also a question to the international community. So what can we do as international community? Also, what can embassies, for example, do? And there's I mean, there's a lot that we can do in terms of keeping people in the spotlights. For example, Human Rights Tulip, those kind of awards that they're being well provided to women, and also shelter, but very short time shelter, 3 months or so. And then there is the only option then to ask for asylum. And many of the women don't want to ask for asylum because they don't, their intention is not to flee the country. Their intention is not to leave their families, but also society behind, because they were working for gender equality and women's rights. They were working for peace. They were working, and they don't want to leave that and to, you know, so that's a really difficult question. How can we as an international community support, and how long should we support as well? Because it needs to be, in our perspective, really, for example, in Afghanistan, an Afghan women-led process. So as an international community, we also don't want to, you know, be too much into charge, but still protect the women.
Advocate someone else's rights, and sometimes you say give voices to those women, but those have their own voices.
You already have voices.
Exactly, and that's such a also paradigm shift that we need to make from the West Europe here, especially, is to, as I said, with Pascal, is practicing what you preach, is also look inside your own house and what is happening here. If we're advocating for women's right there, but there's still also hate against women here in our own country, and more specifically, if we are amplifying, this is it. You can't say we're going to give voices to those women there. We're amplifying their voices, and we can just assist to those voices through these networks and through days like this, and learn from each other.
One of the biggest challenges in there is at the big levels, at the meta level.
Yeah.
Most of us will agree with equality, with every person having the right to be who they are. Yeah. But then it comes down to your actions and how you behave yourself towards other human beings and towards each other. And you're building a community and a society and a globe with each other. And that's where it gets tricky, because I think there's not a lot of people. I think the minority of the world would say, no, that person really doesn't have a reason to live if he or she is XYZ. If it's about color, if it's about gender, if it's about abilities.
Do you believe there's a minority of intrinsic hate and discrimination?
Yeah, I think there's a majority of ignorance and of people not being aware of their own actions and aware of their on things. I think if I look, for instance, to my partner, who's a white male, he'd never been challenged on his thoughts and on his position and on the impact that he has by not being interested and not being engaged and being really being the prototype of it's not my problem. I'm not affected. It's not my problem.
Do you have those conversations with him?
Yeah, definitely.
That he has a responsibility?
Yes.
By the mere fact that he's not affected, so he must be a participatory to the change?
Yes.
Thank you. Let me see if there are participants who would like to react, if they have these kind of dialogues at home as well, maybe with their
don't mind.
Maha.
I just wanted to add something.
Hear you.
Can you hear me? Hello. Hi. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Go ahead, Maha.
Oh, okay. The thing is, if you look through history, like I'm going to talk about the Arabian Peninsula since Saudi Arabia is in the Arabian Peninsula. When you want to involve women through history, you usually bring strong women who are well known in their tribe. Okay, you don't bring somebody who is unknown or somebody who is insignificant, not to offend anybody, but usually this is how they start, or how they started in the Arabian Peninsula. You listen, I mean, even among men, you don't talk to regular people. First of all, you talk to somebody who belongs to a certain tribe, who has a significant position in that tribe. He's either a sheikh or he belongs to a certain good family name, or a tribe, something like that. And the same thing goes to the women. And if we study the history, like I said, of the Arab and the Arabian Peninsula, and even in the Middle East in general, they always listen to women who have a certain position, either comes from a very good tribe or she's married to somebody like the sheikh or the chief of that tribe. And I think Saudi Arabia did that as well. When they first started empowering women, Prince Mohammed bin Salman was very smart that he assigned the first female ambassador, one of his cousins, one of the royal family. Of course, they have many members in the royal family, but he picked a specific lady her father was also an ambassador in the US long time ago. So he's a very educated, smart person. And you can't find somebody who's more suitable than his daughter, who learned firsthand from him and her mother as well. So he started like that. He hired somebody, or he assigned someone who's from a good family, from the royal family. So even if there is hate against women, nobody would say that. You will hear these hate statements coming from maybe on social media, but usually it's not from Saudi Arabia. It's not from the people of Saudi Arabia, because again, maybe like I said, Saudi Arabia is a bit different. The majority of people, they love their kings and their royalty. So when we first heard that Princess Rima was assigned as an ambassador, we were very happy. Of course, she didn't just jump directly to become an ambassador. She was also assigned as the leader of the sports association at first. So she was prepared, and then she was moved on to becoming an ambassador. Also, her brother became an ambassador in Germany for some time. But this is how you start. You start with well-known women in the community, famous women. The same thing goes to chambers, commercial chambers, council of chambers, other places. Here in Saudi, they still focus on not only your achievement, but unfortunately until now with the tribal name, with the, like I said, with the family name. It goes back because we're still very traditional. This have changed in the last 5 years. It's become less and less important. People now are looking more into women career, achievement, skills, qualification, all the profile in general. But when they started with well-known names, with certain tribes. And I think this maybe also suits different countries, but this is what happened here in Saudi.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your contribution. I would actually like to hear from Rula Mikhail from Lebanon, because you also worked for more than 20 years advocating also freedom of expression and media freedom for women and defending human rights in the fields of freedom and expression. And we talk about right now also hate against women in media, but you also defended the role of women creating the media and the freedom of women there in that field. Could you maybe share your thoughts on this subject? Your thoughts?
Sure. Good evening, ladies, and happy Women's Day for all of you. Really, it was like very interesting discussion today. Was was listening to all your contribution. What I want to share with you, it's like my observation and also what I learned through all this year, like observing women's right and also write about it. So first, my first observation is like it's very easy to attack women on their personal life, and it's common. If we look to the politician men politician or even any public figure, man, nobody like talk about their private life, but it's very easy to attack any woman public figure on her private life. And we don't see like really that the public is aware about this, and sometimes they contribute negatively to this discussion. So attacking women on their private life, it makes them vulnerable. And sometimes, and we saw this really during these last 2 years in Lebanon, when we saw like a new emergent women's group and women's activists who were like really outspoken, and they were attacked on their private lives. So they decided or to move on from to be like less outspoken. So it's something really very important that we have to keep an eye on it and really work to see how can we change this habit. And also what I would like to share with you, sometimes we are talking, how can we have a seat and really to take part of the decision maker at any in any field, politics, peace, security, economy. It's not about like having a seat. It's about really how we are present in the sector and how we have and how this present is really has a weight. So we can have like a seat and really try to negotiate and put our opinion on the table. So we still need, it's like the movement here in our region just started, so it's need like a lot of effort to really be on the decision making circle. And here I want also to say that there is a lot of elitism in our region, elitism in everything. So it's not like easy to enter this elitism group and circles and really prove ourselves. Another observations that I would like also to share it with you, that for example, I worked through my organization with a lot of women in economy, and really very successful businesswomen. But also my observation was that these successful businesswomen, they don't want to take part in politics. And we know very well that sometimes you need money to be into politics. And sometimes a woman who has this power of having this capital or this money, it's really it allow her to enter the political sphere. But I still see that women that are successful in economy or even in other fields, they still don't see themselves. No, they can contribute in political life, and this is something that we have really to reflect on it and see why sometimes these successful women in many fields, they really don't want to involve in politics. And we all know that politics is very important, because through legislation, through influencing the public policy, we can advance women's rights more and more. So there is a lot to share on these topics, but quickly, it was like few observations that I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Rula. Thank you on your most beautiful and extensive part, where you, I think, also took notes throughout the whole conversation and enlightened us about Lebanon. And very interesting what you said about successful women in business, but not perhaps having the ambition in politics, because there's also elite. Can you help me, Rex?
No, but yes, I think we understand what you're saying, and it's true. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're also focusing on getting more women into the investment scope, right? We have a responsibility as women that we don't always necessarily feel once we're at the top, right? That we've got there, and now it's our turn to lift others up, to reach down and to grab the other women with us, where there's still that consensus of the pie isn't big enough. So I got here and now I need to protect my little piece of the pie, instead of how can I actually have bake 5 more pies and share. And that's also that we see really the responsibility of and that's a role that we take with our organization, because we work with successful women business owners. And you see that in the investment field, a lot of successful investors are previous entrepreneurs. Women need to start making that transition as well, instead of not going into real estate or saver options. That's all good, but then use 10-20% of your wealth to invest back into the new economy, into the next generation. And it's also the humble bit of the woman, right? Where we create a list every year, the 100 most successful female entrepreneurs of the Netherlands. And we do that because we need to create more visible role models. You can see what you can see you can become, and then we have the conversation with these women, and they're great. But they're like, yeah, but it's not just me; it's the entire company. I'm not comfortable with being that one person up in front, and it's like, no, damn it, you have a responsibility.
Yeah, but how do you invoke that responsibility? How can the capacity and role of women in leadership positions be strengthened and empowered?
What we try to do, and
because what I hear,
process,
I'm sorry,
right?
I'm hearing a mentality change. How can you? Because we also talked about culture and what happens within the house, and from the day that you're born and you're raising. So it's one thing to have those positions available. It's something else to change the mentality of women themselves. How do you do that in your organization?
Well, we try to find the ones that are a little bit more willing and open to that bold change already, that are bold. Also, pushing a little bit more, even when it gets uncomfortable, right? We did a completely rebranding of our organization 2 years ago. And we had a photo shoot for our website and for our communication stuff. And we wanted to portray women actually from the community. So I reached out to 10 or 15 of them and saying, like, you're part of our organization, you're a role model. Are you available next Friday for a photo shoot? And half of them came back and they were like, role model? Why am I a role model? Like, you are, because you have your own business. You get out of bed every day. You kick ass. You're self-sufficient. You're half of them have moms. You're doing it. Just don't be too modest. If I, in that sense, is how we've had conversations about that as well, as how who makes you a leader, who makes you a role model. Is that something that you do from from within, or is that an external force? And a lot of times these conversations come to the realization that there is a huge external force. I'm making you my inspiration. Therefore you're my role model. But then also be open to accepting that position. And it doesn't mean that there's a huge task list for you to then take into consideration, but you're an example. You have a story to tell. You've come from a certain position and now you are where you are. And that's an inspiration for someone else out there.
Yeah, and I'm already very inspired by all the participants of today, also from their position, empowering within their region. And I feel empowered all the way here from the Netherlands as well. And speaking of strengthening the leadership of women, in particular, the Yara, you also encourage women in several events and motivational speaking, and encouraging women to go into the pharmaceutical and cosmetic industry, also to achieve the same through technical experience. Would you, Yara, tell us more about how you came about, where you found yourself to have the ambition to empower women to also take those leadership positions? And how do you do that when it comes to that mentality shift that you have to create with women, young women, and the next generation?
Actually, I'm very lucky. I told the ladies yes in the introductory session, because I interact in the pharmaceutical industry. I interact on weekly basis with different companies, different countries, different cultures. And I've seen, as Maha said, in Saudi Arabia, because I started there in Saudi Arabia, there was a lot of empowering that is happening for women. There was a shift in the last 5 to 7 years. Actually, what I do usually is I involve as much as I can the highest number of female employees from these pharmaceutical companies with my projects. In my projects, we train them, we mentor them, and we empower them by focusing on how they can achieve as their male peers can achieve and more. Okay, with the same tools, and celebrate their success stories. This is one thing that the young female really needs, the young pharmacists, the young engineers who really enter the labor market and they are confused. Am I right? Am I enough? Can I do what is needed like my male peer or my male colleague? Also, I have been involved with several businesswomen who started their own businesses. They started their own factories, cosmetics. In the first place, it's cosmetics plants and cosmetics manufacturing facilities here, specifically in Jordan. This is very common. Most of the cosmetics industry and the Dead Sea industry is owned by ladies. So we usually what I do is it's the same setup I used for myself, for my own company. I go through with them with the same setup I have used for my company. I try my best to grab to reach a hand to them the same way my friends has reached a hand for me to build the business, to empower more women. I have a nice example. It's a lady here in Jordan. She has a small plant. She's a very good friend. And when she started her plant, her manufacturing facility, now she is recruiting 53 women. It's a woman-only facility. They do everything. It's a manufacturing facility. It's very heavy duty industry. Yet they are 53 women. No men at all in the facility, and this is a very nice experience. So also I have been involved in EY entrepreneurship women program in the region, and we have worked with many women business owners so they can enhance their business, they can grow their business, and they can break the glass roof.
So much. It's basically the pie that you were talking about. If I would picture a pie, it would be infinite. And she's speaking about sharing it as well. It's not about just having your own pie or baking one. It's about paying it forward. It's infinite, basically, definitely. Right?
Yes.
On the floor, would you like to? I haven't heard from you in a while. Would you like to react to what was being said, and also an additional question, and also to round up? But after you, I want to hear from Gada as well in this question, because I'm interested in your part on this, about the role of men when it comes to empowerment of female leadership. What can men do from household until being your peers in your professional environment to create empowerment of female leadership?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important that men, they are part of society, and there's a need of a society change. It's not only women that need to empower, because you will get stuck, in a society where you don't have any space to do something with your empowered personality or ambitions. So the entire society needs to change, and it goes from the elder men till the also the boys that you raise yourself as princes or not. So yeah, definitely the entire society needs to change. And I think when we're talking about also we were talking earlier about amplifying women's voices. I think that one of the tasks that we have as international community, as civil society organizations, is really to make sure that in the donor conferences, during UN Security Council briefings, during the UN Human Rights Council sessions, discussions with permanent missions, that we invite our local sisters, our sisters from all different countries, that need to have that seat at the table to be there.
It's their story. It's
It's
about
their story.
rights.
They need to be there. And if they cannot access the fora themselves, make sure there's an internet connection. If that is not possible, make sure that you have a position paper that you read out loud. So there are several things that we can do. And I think flexible core funding is also very important. There was already this discussion on the elitization, or how do you call it?
Yeah, that's where I got stuck.
We create that. Also,
Yeah.
international community is very, very good at creating elites and supporting elites, because it's indeed women with the resources, with the visa, etc., that can travel, etc., and that can, be part of the decision-making processes. And it's very much needed that they also have flexible core funding, so that they can come back to their constituency, know what is happening at the grassroots level, and that their sisters at the grassroots level are informed about what's happening at the international level. We cannot do that if those women are only funded to travel from Geneva to New York to The Hague. They need to, these organizations, women's rights organizations, need to have flexible core funding to exist, to be healthy, democratic, developed civil society organizations.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ana Flor. I want to, because the participants are the most important today. Gada, I want to hear your thoughts. I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly, Gada Ibrahim. You were the first one we heard today, so I want to round up with you too when it comes to the role of men, because what struck me in your story and what touched me as well is also what happened to me in law school, is when you look around you, women are in majority, and when you go to the professional field, women are in minority. What is the role of men, especially in engineering environment, and also the role of men in a household that you said you have 3 kids now, in the upbringing of children, and how you can have micro revolutions in the role of boys and men in the household as well. Could you share your last thoughts?
Yeah, it's basically, this can be an entire 3-hour webinar topic, but yeah, I think on the, basically when I have a degree in architecture, and I did work in the constructions and building field for 5 years, but then I did a career shift. Now I work for international, a humanitarian international organization in tech. So basically I learned programming. I was a participant in the program I currently lead. So this has been either, basically when I was an architect, I was the only female architect in the office of the firm, the architecture firm I worked with or worked in. So I think it's definitely sad to see that I am the only female there working there, but also it has contributed a lot to the involvement of me personally and professionally, to be able to speak up, because I think Mona has mentioned on our first meeting, she identified as shy person, and so am I. I think I do. I identify myself as an introvert. I'm not an extrovert. I always I'm always nervous to speak in public, but my personality has hugely ever since then, because of all of the the pressure of speaking up and talking, presenting your work. So there's good and bad things in that, but also there's a need for
I don't want to cut you off, but I want you to answer because it's interesting that you say, and we have to round up, but what is the role of men, even if you're an introvert, even if you were that one person and you developed because you were unique in your position, but it did something, because of course it does something to your personal development, but what was the role of men peers in your environment, and how did they treat you, and what can they do differently to the next generation in order to support female leadership also in the architect world?
Yeah, I think it's mainly the perception of how we see women and how we take them seriously, right? Because this is the main issue. Having that safe space where women can actually talk about their ambition and talk about their work safely without being afraid of being judged. This is the most important part. Everything we're talking about women and lack of women participation is that because of lack of confidence, because that comes with us as we are growing up. we are afraid to speak up, and we are afraid to talk about like our thoughts, sharing our ideas, you know, just as simple as that. So I think our mandate also in the professional life is just to have that space. To, for example, the program I lead, I have a mandate to have 15%, like 50% of the participant on the course or on the program for women. So this is like whatever, like I need to do work in order to like have, you know, equal number of quality women to men. And I do lots of work on the background to, you know, make sure this is women are represented in the field. So yeah, these are like my rough thoughts on this. Yes.
Gada, thank you so much. And thank you all to participants. As you said, we could talk about this for 3 hours or maybe a 3-day conference session and so on and so on. There's still a lot of work to do, but I can round up with saying that I have met a lot of fearless women, a lot of bold women. Let's say cheers on this International Women's Day for hopefully in the future to have fearlessness, to be able to be in a healthy environment and space for women where there's no hate against women, but we are being applauded to have those ambitions. Thank you, Rix, for all your efforts that you're doing, are continuing to do to coach women. Thank you, Anna Floor, for the great work that you do through Women Equals Men. And thank you to all participants. Hopefully in 2022, I will meet you all live. Shukran, alaf shukr, I think you say in Arabic. Have a very nice International Women's Day. I hope you will get a flower at home or celebrate somehow. I see Gada looking. I think she has to work a lot today. But thank you so much, and hopefully see you live next year. Thank you.
No intention of saying. People love to be married. They love to be encouraged to go on. These skills help you improve